Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. Kathy stepped through the front door, her face brightened by a smile that felt a little too wide, her hands clutching a massive bouquet of red roses. I was at the kitchen counter, sipping coffee, and the sight of her holding the flowers immediately put me on edge. "For you, my love," she whispered as she held them out to me, leaning in for a kiss that I gave only half-heartedly. The sweetness of her tone didn't match the sour feeling in my gut. Something was off. "Roses, huh?" I tried to keep my voice casual, but the slight tremor in my words betrayed me. Kathy shrugged, placing the bouquet on the table. "Just thought I'd surprise you. Aren't they beautiful?" Her eyes sparkled, but the way she fidgeted with her fingers didn't escape me. Beautiful? Maybe. But it wasn't the beauty of the roses that caught my attention. It was one of the buds, wrinkled, almost crushed, nestled among the others like it didn't belong. My hand moved before I even realized it, reaching out to inspect the bruised flower. There was something strange about it, something more than just a flaw in the petals. I began unwrapping the flowers while Kathy moved into the kitchen to start unpacking groceries. As I peeled away the layers of delicate red petals, my breath hitched. There, pinned between them, was a tiny piece of paper. Folded carefully, it almost blended into the deep red hues. I slipped it out cautiously, fingers trembling. The note was small, barely bigger than a business card, with hurried handwriting I recognized immediately. My blood ran cold. "Love you, meet me at the fountain at 6. No name, no signature. But it didn't need one. I knew that handwriting, sharp and precise, almost clinical. It belonged to Robert, a colleague of mine, someone I had shared endless hours with at the office. He was always the quiet one, always the observer. My stomach churned as the pieces clicked into place. My wife was cheating on me, with him. I folded the note back up, heart pounding in my chest as I turned to look at Kathy, who was busy humming some tune, pretending everything was normal. I stared at her, my mind racing. Every word she'd said, every late night at work, every missed dinner now felt like a lie. "Where did you get these flowers?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. "Oh, I stopped by the florist near the office. Thought it was time I did something nice for you," she replied without looking up from the groceries. It was hard to keep the bile from rising in my throat. How many lies had she fed me in the past few weeks? Months? My hand clenched around the note, crumpling it in my fist. Rage simmered beneath my skin, but I forced myself to stay calm. No. Now wasn't the time to blow up. Not yet. I needed to think. I walked up to her, placing the bouquet on the counter next to her with deliberate force. She turned to look at me, her smile faltering just for a second. "You sure you got these from a florist?" I asked, my tone sharper than I intended. Her eyes flickered with something, fear? Panic? She covered it quickly with a laugh. "Of course, why?" "No reason. They just look familiar," I said, stepping back. I couldn't confront her now. Not until I had a plan. A way to unravel this web she had spun behind my back. I excused myself, heading to the study where I could breathe, think. The note burned in my pocket. Kathy had no idea that I knew, no idea that I had seen through her deception. But now, I had an advantage. And I wasn't about to let that slip away. Revenge wouldn't be a simple outburst. No, it had to be methodical, calculated. She had played me for a fool, and I wasn't going to walk away easily. If she thought she could keep living this double life, she was wrong. I would dismantle everything she thought she had, piece by piece. Her lies would come crashing down around her. I glanced at the clock. 4 hours until 6. 4 hours until I could confirm everything. The fountain in the park wasn't far from here, a spot I'd passed on my way to work many times. I could see her meet him, catch her in the act. But more than that, I could turn this betrayal into something she wouldn't see coming. The best revenge would be to strike when she least expected it. I grabbed my jacket, mind already spinning with possibilities. I wasn't just going to catch her. I was going to ruin her. As I left the house, the door closing behind me with a quiet click, the cold October air hit my face like a slap. I needed it to clear my head. My mind was spinning, replaying Kathy's words, her too casual demeanor, and Robert's handwriting on that note. The thought of the two of them together was a punch to the gut, but I pushed the anger down. I needed to stay focused. There was a long game to play, and I wasn't going to let my emotions get in the way. I walked down the block, hands in my pockets, the note crumpled tightly in my fist. I could still feel the imprint of the sharp pin that had held it to the rose, as if it had somehow pierced deeper into my skin than it actually had. My destination was clear, the park with the fountain. It was only a few minutes away, and if Kathy really planned to meet him there, I'd see it for myself. As I reached the park entrance, I slowed my pace, blending into the evening crowd. Joggers, couples, parents with strollers, they all passed by, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. I found a bench tucked behind some thick bushes with a clear view of the fountain. The water trickled steadily, the light from nearby street lamps casting a soft glow over the area. I checked my watch. 5:30. I still had time to think, to plan. 1,000 possibilities raced through my mind. Should I confront her here? Make a scene in front of Robert and everyone else? No. Too messy. Kathy would try to deny it, spin some ridiculous lie. I needed more than just catching them in the act, I needed to make sure there was no way for her to slither out of this. I sat there, eyes scanning the park, keeping an eye on the entrance and the fountain. Minutes ticked by. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw a text from Kathy. Running late. Don't wait up for dinner. Love you. The nerve of her. Love you, she says, while planning to meet another man in secret. The hypocrisy of it almost made me laugh. But my focus was razor sharp. I knew what was coming. At 6 o'clock sharp, I saw her. Kathy walked into the park, her stride confident but quick, as though she didn't want to be noticed. She wore a coat, one I had bought her for our anniversary. My jaw clenched. The sight of her, knowing what she was doing behind my back, filled me with a mix of rage and a sick sense of satisfaction. She had no idea I was watching. She stopped by the fountain, looking around as if she were waiting for someone. I stayed glued to my spot, hidden in the shadows of the trees. And then, just like clockwork, Robert appeared. He was dressed in his usual work attire, though his tie was loosened, his demeanor casual. As he walked up to her, he glanced around, making sure no one was paying attention. Amateur. They met at the edge of the fountain, a little too close for it to be innocent. Robert leaned in, whispering something in her ear, and Kathy laughed, a laugh I hadn't heard in months. That stung more than anything. They didn't touch, at least not yet, but the way she looked at him told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't just some fling, this was something deeper. I could feel my pulse in my throat, my fingers itching to do something, anything, but I held back. Confronting them now wouldn't give me the satisfaction I craved. No, I needed to wait. Let them think they were getting away with it. Let them dig their own graves. I watched for a few more minutes as they chatted quietly, their conversation punctuated by occasional glances around the park. Kathy pulled out her phone at one point, checking the time, probably to make sure she wouldn't be late getting back to me with whatever excuse she had lined up. Eventually, Robert pulled her into a quick, discreet hug, the kind that could be written off as friendly if anyone happened to be watching too closely. But I knew better. I had seen enough. I rose from the bench, slipping out of the park as silently as I had entered. My mind was already calculating the next steps. If Kathy thought this was going to end with me simply catching her in the act and throwing a tantrum, she was sorely mistaken. I was going to destroy her life, methodically, piece by piece. I headed back home, the walk giving me time to think. I needed to gather evidence. Real evidence. Texts, emails, anything that could be used against her. I had access to everything, our shared bank accounts, her computer, her phone. If I played my cards right, I could make sure she had nowhere to hide. By the time I reached the house, it was dark. Kathy wasn't home yet, just as I had expected. I let myself in quietly, heading straight to our bedroom. Her phone was charging on the nightstand. I had seen her passcode enough times to know it by heart. With a deep breath, I picked it up, unlocking it smoothly. The first thing I did was check her messages. There, under a name she had disguised as Susan, was an entire thread of texts between her and Robert. I scrolled through them, feeling a sickening mixture of disgust and anger with every word. They weren't shy about their affair, discussing everything from when to meet to how much they missed each other. But that wasn't all. The messages revealed a plan, a weekend getaway. Kathy had been telling me she had a work retreat next month, something about team building. But the texts made it clear, she and Robert were going to spend that weekend together in a hotel, and she had been lying about it for weeks. My hands shook as I scrolled through the messages, but I kept my focus. I took screenshots of everything, sending them to myself as quietly as I could. I was building my case, piece by piece, just like I'd planned. When I was done, I carefully put the phone back on the nightstand, exactly where I had found it. When Kathy finally came home, I was sitting at the kitchen table, pretending to read a book. She slipped in quietly, acting as though nothing had happened. She kissed me on the cheek, said she was exhausted, and headed straight to bed. I stayed in the kitchen for a while longer, staring at the screenshots on my phone, the proof of her betrayal staring back at me. My pulse pounded in my ears, but I kept my cool. Tomorrow, I'd begin the real work of unraveling her life. She wouldn't see it coming. Revenge, they say, is a dish best served cold. And I plan to serve it ice cold. The morning light filters through the bedroom curtains, casting a soft glow across the room. I wake up before Kathy, as I usually do, but today feels different. Today, the weight of the evidence I collected the night before settles over me like a second skin. I roll over and watch her sleep for a moment, her breathing slow and steady, completely oblivious to the storm about to break. I slip out of bed quietly, moving through the house on autopilot. My mind is already racing with plans, possibilities. Kathy's phone is still on the nightstand, but I don't need it anymore. I have everything I need to begin dismantling her carefully constructed web of lies. It's only a matter of time. In the kitchen, I start making breakfast, the mundane task a stark contrast to the chaos bubbling inside me. Eggs sizzle in the pan as I think about the next steps. There's no room for error here. My revenge needs to be as meticulous as it is final. Kathy will never see it coming. By the time she wakes up and shuffles into the kitchen, I'm sitting at the table, a plate of scrambled eggs and toast waiting for her. She smiles at me, her face the picture of innocence. "Morning," she says, leaning down to kiss me on the cheek. "You're up early." "Yeah," I reply, forcing a smile. "Just couldn't sleep." Kathy sits down, grabbing her fork and taking a bite of her breakfast. She doesn't suspect a thing. Why would she? In her mind, she's still in control of the situation. She thinks her affair with Robert is hidden, safely tucked away in secret texts and stolen moments. But she's wrong. "So, what's your plan for today?" she asks, completely unaware that I'm about to flip her world upside down. I shrug. Just the usual. Got some work to do. You? She takes another bite before answering, same. I've got a meeting in the afternoon. Might be home a little late again. Of course she does. My stomach churns, but I keep my expression neutral. I have to play along for now. Timing is everything. Sounds good, I say, standing up and clearing my plate. I'll see you tonight, then. She smiles again, and I can't help but notice how easy it is for her to lie to my face. It's almost impressive. Almost. I leave the house without a word, heading to the office. The drive is quiet, the steady hum of the engine the only noise in my ears. But my mind is loud, racing with plans, ideas. By the time I arrive, I know exactly what I'm going to do. Robert is already at his desk when I walk in. He gives me a nod, the same nod he's given me every day for years. There's no guilt in his eyes, no flicker of shame. Just business as usual. If only he knew what I had in store for him. I settle into my own desk, keeping an eye on him out of the corner of my vision. I can't act yet. Not here. Not while he's surrounded by our colleagues. But soon. The anticipation builds in my chest, adrenaline coursing through me as I pull up my emails, pretending to work. My phone buzzes in my pocket. A text from Kathy. Meeting moved to 5. See you later, love. The gall of it. I clench my fist, staring at the screen for a moment before responding with a simple, okay. She has no idea that today is the day everything changes. By lunch, I have everything in place. I've spent the morning combing through Robert's social media profiles, digging through his past posts, comments, and interactions. It didn't take long to find something useful, an old scandal from years ago that he'd buried deep. But it's enough. Just a hint of it is enough to put him in jeopardy at work. I make an anonymous tip to HR, attaching a few screenshots I've saved. It's nothing major on its own, but combined with what's about to happen, it will be enough to ruin him. People will start asking questions. His reputation will crumble. After sending the email, I lean back in my chair, a smile playing at the corners of my mouth. Step 1, set the trap. The afternoon passes slowly. I keep an eye on Robert, watching as he goes about his day, completely unaware that his world is already beginning to collapse. I leave the office early, heading home to prepare for what comes next. When I arrive, the house is empty, just as I expected. Kathy won't be home for a few hours, and that gives me plenty of time to put the final pieces of my plan into motion. I go to the closet in our bedroom, pulling down a suitcase and laying it open on the bed. Slowly, methodically, I begin packing her clothes. Each item I fold and place into the suitcase feels like another nail in the coffin of our marriage. The anger that had been simmering all day rises to the surface, but I keep it under control. This isn't about an outburst. This is about precision. Kathy will come home to find her life neatly packed away, and she'll have no choice but to face the consequences of her betrayal. I stop when I hear her car pull into the driveway. My heart pounds in my chest, but I stay calm. I've waited for this moment, and now it's here. The door opens, and I hear her call out, "Hey, I'm home." I don't respond. I sit on the edge of the bed, suitcase beside me, waiting. Kathy appears in the doorway, her smile fading when she sees the open suitcase and the clothes neatly folded inside. Her eyes flick to me, confusion and panic flashing across her face. "What's going on?" she asks, her voice shaky. I stand, holding up my phone, the screenshots of her messages with Robert displayed on the screen. I know. Her face drains of color. She takes a step back, her hand flying to her mouth. What are you talking about?" I walk toward her, the phone still in my hand. "Don't play dumb, Kathy. I've seen the texts. I know about you and Robert. Her eyes dart around the room, like she's searching for a way out, but there isn't one. Not anymore. I can explain, she stammers, her voice barely above a whisper. It's not what you think. I laugh, a cold, hollow sound that makes her flinch. It's exactly what I think. You've been lying to me for months. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? Tears fill her eyes, but I feel nothing. No sympathy, no remorse. Just cold, calculated rage. It was a mistake, she pleads. I didn't mean for it to happen. I swear, it didn't mean anything. It didn't mean anything. I repeat, my voice rising. You've been sneaking around behind my back, lying to me every single day, and you expect me to believe it didn't mean anything? She sobs now, her shoulders shaking, but I don't care. She made her bed, and now she has to lie in it. You're leaving, I say, my voice firm. Tonight. I've packed your things. You can stay with Robert, for all I care. Kathy shakes her head, her sobs turning to desperate gasps. Please, no. Don't do this. We can work it out. Please. But there's no going back. Not after this. I grab the suitcase and shove it toward her. Get out. She hesitates, still crying, but eventually she takes the suitcase. Her hands tremble as she pulls it behind her, leaving the bedroom, leaving the life we'd built together in ruins. As she walks out the door, I don't feel relief. Not yet. This is only the beginning. Robert is next. And when I'm done, neither of them will have anything left. The sound of the front door slamming behind Kathy echoes through the house like a gunshot. I stand in the quiet, the weight of what just happened settling over me like a thick fog. She's gone, but the rage inside me isn't satisfied. Not yet. The woman I once loved has torn apart everything we built, but there's still one more piece of the puzzle that needs to be shattered, Robert. I sit down at the kitchen table, eyes unfocused, mind sharp. The clock on the wall ticks steadily, each second fueling the fire burning inside me. The plan is already in motion, and I know exactly where to strike next. Robert thinks he's safe, that no one knows about his affair with Kathy. He's wrong. I grab my phone and dial his number, my hand steady. It rings a few times before his voice comes through, casual, like we're old friends. Hey, man. What's up? The sound of his voice makes my skin crawl. I force myself to speak calmly, even though my heart pounds in my chest. Robert, I need your help with something. Can you meet me at the office? It's urgent. There's a pause, and for a moment, I wonder if he suspects anything. But then he says, yeah, sure. I'll be there in half an hour. I hang up without another word, my fingers trembling just slightly now. The final act is about to begin. I head to the office, my mind swirling with thoughts of what I'm about to do. There's no going back after this. But that's the point, isn't it? They destroyed my life, so now I'll destroy theirs. When I arrive at the office, the building is dark and empty, just like I knew it would be. I let myself in and head straight to the conference room where I've prepared everything. On the table sits a folder filled with the evidence I've gathered, the texts, the emails, and the photos. It's more than enough to ruin Robert, to make sure he never works again. But that's not the worst of it. A few minutes later, I hear the door open and footsteps approaching. Robert walks in, looking confused but calm. What's going on? He asks, glancing around the room. I sit down across from him, sliding the folder across the table. You tell me, I say, my voice cold, devoid of emotion. Robert hesitates, picking up the folder and flipping it open. As he scans the contents, his face pales. His eyes widen, and for a moment, he's speechless. I can explain, he stammers, dropping the folder onto the table. It's not what it looks like. Don't, I cut him off, leaning forward. I know exactly what it is. You've been sleeping with my wife. You lied to me, just like she did. Robert's mouth opens and closes, but no words come out. The silence stretches between us, thick with tension. You thought you could get away with it, didn't you? I continue, my voice rising. You thought I wouldn't find out. That you could screw my wife behind my back and I'd be none the wiser. I didn't mean for it to happen, Robert says, his voice shaky. I swear, it just happened. We never wanted to hurt you. You never wanted to hurt me. I echo, my voice dripping with sarcasm. You've destroyed everything. And now you're going to pay. I stand up, pacing the room as Robert watches, fear creeping into his expression. He knows something is coming, but he doesn't know what. I stop in front of him, leaning down until our faces are inches apart. I've sent everything to HR. The texts, the emails, every piece of evidence that proves what you did. By tomorrow morning, you'll be out of a job. They're going to crucify you for this. And if you think that's the worst of it, you're wrong. Robert's eyes widen in horror. Please, man, don't do this. I'll do anything. I'll quit, leave the company. Just don't ruin me. It's too late, I say, standing up straight. You ruined yourself. There's a knock at the door, and Robert flinches. I turn, and a small, satisfied smile crosses my face. Right on time. The door opens, and 2 security guards step inside. I had called them earlier, told them there was a security breach and that they needed to escort someone off the premises. They don't know the details, but they don't need to. All they know is that Robert isn't supposed to be here anymore. Mr. Reed, one of the guards says, looking at me. I nod, stepping aside. This man has violated company policy. He's been terminated, effective immediately. The guards nod, moving toward Robert, who stands up, panic written across his face. You can't do this, he pleads, but they're already grabbing his arms, leading him toward the door. I follow them out, watching as they drag Robert through the halls, his protests growing weaker with each step. When they reach the lobby, they shove him out the door, and he stumbles into the night, defeated. It's over. He's lost everything. I stand in the doorway for a moment, the cool air brushing against my skin. But the victory feels hollow. Robert is gone, Kathy is gone, and yet the anger still simmers inside me. I thought this would be enough, but it isn't. Not yet. A week passes. Kathy has been staying with Robert, or so I assume. I haven't heard from her, and I don't care to. But then, one night, my phone rings. It's a number I don't recognize, but something tells me to answer it. Hello? There's a pause, and then a familiar voice comes through the line, shaky and broken. It's Kathy. My grip tightens on the phone. What do you want? I need to talk to you, she says, her voice trembling. It's about Robert. I hesitate, but then she says something that catches my attention. He's dead. For a moment, I don't respond. What did you just say? Robert's dead, she repeats, her voice cracking. He killed himself. After everything that happened at work, he couldn't handle it. I found him this morning. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I sit down, my mind reeling. This wasn't part of the plan. I wanted revenge, but not this. Not death. He left a note, Kathy continues, her sobs coming through the phone. He said he couldn't live with the guilt, that he couldn't face the future without a job, without respect. It's your fault. Stop, I snap, cutting her off. Don't you dare try to blame this on me. You both did this to yourselves. There's silence on the other end of the line, just the sound of her quiet sobs. I never want to see you again, I say, my voice cold. This is over. You and Robert destroyed everything. Now you have to live with the consequences. I hang up, my heart pounding in my chest. The house is silent, but the weight of everything crashes down around me. Robert is dead, and Kathy is gone forever. The revenge I craved feels bitter in my mouth, and all I'm left with is emptiness. In the end, I've destroyed them both. And myself in the process.